West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
The first reading is a poem. It's a poem, a hymn of inequality. It expresses the chaos caused by inequality, how inequality causes us to turn against one another, actually creating differences. In the end, however, the poem still contains a cause for hope. Hymn of Inequality by Ralph Atkinson. Whirlpool of whirling quaint, inequality brewing in the winepress of smithereens, fragile polity, voices of weariness cried out of the waste yard of waste for succour, pointing fingers of recrimination towards the abyss of drought, entangled in conflicts of interest, winds of impoverished emblem, bearing of woes, raising hands from the drowning deep sea for rescue like a dejected, beautiful Figaro in a turbulent ocean of quarrel with her spouse. Whereas reddish fluids of life runs across the same veins and arteries of haves and have not, but cottage of interests, hoisting avalanche of rainbow-colored flags, standing aloof on the pole of misrule, demarking their interests. No accommodation for wants in the corridor of affluence. Wants on a trade mission with wealthy but caged in the confinement of wealth. Winds of inequality, blue whirler of wants into the marrow of the haves not. Rains of inequality passing through a lockage of lack into the impoverished, doling out poverty to gain the control of wealth. But we shall revive our hope and raise our voices tomorrow. Offered for wisdom for the journey. May we walk in its light. Our second reading is a poem by Langston Hughes called I Dream a World. In it, Hughes dreams of a better world, a world of peace, a world where everyone has enough. It's important to dream. I Dream a World by Langston Hughes. I dream a world where man, no other man, will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, no avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every person is free, where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy like a pearl attends the needs of all mankind. Of such a dream, I dream my world. Offered as wisdom for the journey. May we walk in its light.
Walk in its light.
Mind the gap. That's a sign we often see getting off the subway or moving around some other public space where there might be a gap and they don't want you to trip and hurt yourself. So mind the gap. It's good advice. But I'm going to talk about a different gap. The gap I'm going to talk about is the gap between the rich and poor. talking about inequality, and today especially about income inequality. And the gap between the rich and poor is growing every day. We saw that even in a country like New Zealand in that video. There are more billionaires now than ever before. In the year 2000, the total number of billionaires was 470. By 2021, there were around 2,700. At the same time, homelessness is on the rise in Canada, the US, and almost all European countries. And that's the world we live in. We have created a world where there are those with unimaginable wealth and those with nowhere to live. Those 2,700 all billionaires have a total net worth of over $12.7 trillion. And that's enough to end world hunger many times over. So I'm asking you to mind the gap. Now, I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm privileged enough to be, in the top 10% of the wealthy in the world, even if I'm nowhere near one of them billionaires. But that can't be good enough for me. It's not good enough if I'm all right while there are Indigenous children sleeping rough in our neighborhood. The existence of such disparity of wealth causes so much harm in the world. The gap of inequality creates division and chaos. It harms relationships. It harms our relationality, so vividly captured in Ralph Eckenton's hymn to inequality we heard a few moments ago. He writes of a whirlpool of inequality brewing in a winepress of smithereens, the rains of inequality doling out our poverty to gain control of wealth. Inequality causes great harm in our world, so we must mind the gap. Inequality actually creates difference. It creates the other. It implies a value of those who are rich and those who are poor. We blame people for being poor and credit the rich for being rich. We imagine that we live in a meritocracy, where if you work hard enough, you'll be okay. We believe the rich deserve to be rich. Well, the poor must have something wrong with them. They're lazy or not competent enough to make their way. But I don't think we really live in a meritocracy. The rich are not rich through their merit, but through accidents of birth and unjust structures. There's ample evidence showing how misogyny leads to lower wages for women, and racism leads to a lack of opportunity for Black and Indigenous people and other people of color. But I don't think a meritocracy, even if we did live in one, I don't think that's desirable. Smarter and more skilled people should not gain unimaginable wealth, while other people can't even afford a place to live. Just because someone is more capable than their neighbor in no way means that they're any more worthy or valuable or more deserving of a safe place to live. No one deserves to be homeless. You shouldn't have to merit a home. A home should be a right. And so we have to mind the gap. And in fact, the idea of a meritocracy, which apparently we're supposed to live in, it's actually directly against our values here at West Hill United. In VisionWorks, our values statement, we say that our commitment to love leads us to acknowledge the worth of all beings, and therefore the right to be treated with dignity and respect. But a meritocracy does not do that. It reserves dignity and respect for those who have earned it, those who have merited it. And we don't offer dignity or respect when we sit idly by while there are people living in tents through a Canadian winter. And just the other day, a homeless person died at a fire in an encampment in Liberty Village here in Toronto. And I'm sure homeless people are suffering indignities no matter where you're connecting from in this world. And also in VisionWorks, we confess our responsibility for the consequences of our actions and inactions. And we say we strive to promote justice, resist injustice, and bring about reconciliation. So we have to mind the gap and remember that we're not really looking for a meritocracy, that we are all responsible for the well-being of everyone else. And that's the interconnectedness of what we call the web of life. And again, in VisionWorks, we say, it's with a deep sense of awe and wonder we acknowledge life in all its diversity and complexity as an interconnected web of relationships beyond our full comprehension. So we live in this web of life, and when one part of the web of life is suffering, it is all of our responsibility. To quote Martin Luther King Jr., "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And so we must mind the gap." And if we are truly to value this interconnected web of life, and if we really want to respond with love, then how can we stand for children sleeping rough in the ravine right here in East Scarborough? How can we stand for homelessness amidst unimaginable wealth? But it's one thing not to stand for it, another thing to actually be able to do something about it. And it is such a huge problem. It seems intractable. It seems like there's nothing we can do, that the world is just like that. But that's not true. It may not be easy. It may take a lot of effort. But ending homelessness is possible if we mind the gap. And there's actually an example of a country where they have managed to reduce the gap at least somewhat. In Finland, the number of homeless people has decreased from 20,000 people in the mid-1980s to around 4,000 by 2021. And Finland's the only country in the European Union to see homeless numbers significantly decrease during that time. The progress in Finland demonstrates what can be achieved with national backing, prioritization of ending homelessness, and working in partnership. Finland did this through a housing first approach. Housing first ends an individual's homelessness by moving them quickly into independent and permanent housing, that is, a home, and then providing additional support and services as needed for as long as needed. Housing must come first. People have a right to housing. They shouldn't have to earn it. They don't need to merit it. The core and very simple principle is that people are better able to move forward with their lives if they are first housed. Housing First offers secure, permanent, non-time limited housing to people who are experiencing homelessness, with ongoing person-centered support that isn't tied to any conditions. It ensures that when homelessness is experienced, it is rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. And people will question if we can really afford it. They might suggest that it's just too expensive. And while it's true that upfront costs may be high, evidence shows that in the long term, Housing First saves money. Recent reports from Finland have shown that 15,000 euros a year is saved for every homeless person in properly supported housing, considering the costs that would otherwise be incurred through emergency health care, social services, and criminal justice involvement. So you see, it's possible to reduce housing if we really believe that it's possible. There are steps that can be taken if we mind the gap and actually believe that ending homelessness is possible. And maybe that's what we need, to believe that we can end homelessness. And maybe before we can actually believe that, we have to dream it first. And that's what Paul Ricoeur, the French continental philosopher, called the poetic imagination. Ricoeur wrote of something called the social imaginary, And what he means by the social imaginary is a set of collective stories and histories which affect how we see and understand and organize our society. The stories and narratives are not created by a single author, but they still drive what we believe about the world and how we should respond. And in a very real sense, these narratives constitute a social reality. Currently, we're telling stories of a meritocracy, and people have the opportunity to pull themselves up from their bootstraps. And if one works hard enough, they'll succeed. That if they have enough merit, all will be well for them. But have we seen that this story leads us to a place where there are billionaires alongside people who don't even have a place to live? So maybe we need another story, a different story. A story that tells us that homelessness is a human invention. Maybe we need a story that tells us that there is enough for everyone. Maybe we need to dream of a new world, a better world. And that's what Langston Hughes was trying to do in his poem we heard today, I Dream of a World. Hughes dreamt of a world where no one will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. He dreamt of a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. Hughes imagined a world where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and everyone is free, where wretchedness will hang its head, and joy, like a pearl, attends the needs of all humankind. Of such I dream my world. So let us dream of such a world. Yes, let us take action like Finland did through its Housing First and commit to ending homelessness. But we must not forget to dream of a world where all divisions cease and there is no gap. Only then will we no longer have to mind the gap. Peace.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.